Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. And today we are on episode 63. And we have a very special guest with us this morning. Welcome, Zachary Rain.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, Zach's a pro at doing these things already. These podcasts. He's been on our brother's station or our sister station, whatever we want to call it, podcast, the Chosen Life. How many times already?
Oh,
2 or 3?
Oh no, you're looking 3 or 4 at least.
3 or 4 already.
Yeah, I've been there a lot. Well, I don't know. Every time I say something, at least John props me up to say that the real controversial stuff, like Patrick Kane is coming to the Leafs and everybody loves me. Oh boy, the YouTube comments, man, they just freaking adore me.
Yeah, I haven't seen that trade go down yet.
I'm still waiting. I don't know. Apparently, he keeps coming out and saying, I'd sooner retire than go play for the Leafs, but.
Hang in there with your prediction.
Yeah, exactly. I've gotten a few of them right though, so I'm trying to remain patient here.
Yeah. Well, Zach is a big sports fan, as are David and I. Like we're all into it, which is fun. And maybe we'll just do another podcast, the three of us just talking sports. I think we'd all have more fun. But we got some really good things to talk about today. We got quite an agenda and we're really glad to have you on, Zach, because you're a real pro at all this stuff and you got a great way of explaining things. So maybe we should jump into it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm very excited to be on, guys. So thank you very much for having me. And I don't know, when I get started talking about finance, it's like a sport for me. So you'll see the passion start coming out.
And you know what? It should be, because finance is such a big part of our lives, but especially in the real estate industry, it's just not talked about enough, right? And I want to unfold and get into some of these topics. But Zach, before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a little bit about your background?
No, that'd be great. So quick background on me is I own financial services firm Rain Finance. We're a very, very small boutique, up and coming, experiencing great growth, which I'm happy about even through the pandemic. Full service, we offer all life insurance, critical illness insurance, so any insurance that would be on your life, disability, health and dental, things like that. Services, we have investment services, financial planning services. A lot of the work that we do is from a financial planning perspective. So, how can we enhance tax planning, estate planning, retirement planning, things like that? And I kind of just use the insurance and investments as just tools to get there, right? So we do a lot of that, group benefits as well, a big part of our firm. I am a 4th generation financial advisor. So the financial advice has been running through my family's veins for just under 100 years, which is crazy. Yeah, I know it's not something you knew about growing up, because it's not like you go to your great grandfather and uncle and you're all like, hey, what do you guys do for a living? Tell me about it, right? But as you get into the industry and you start talking and people start conversing with you, I did this, I did that, we were doing this, I know that company. It's amazing. I have 5 financial planners in my family, which is it's nuts.
That's crazy. That's really cool.
Mm.
It's so rare to see somebody do financial planning and insurance at the same time. Like, you don't find that very often in the industry, but you're right. Those are tools that you have in your tool set to really help somebody go through and plan their finances and, tax deferral strategies. And I'm sure we'll get into some of that as well in the podcast, but, you don't really find those two worlds blended all too often.
It's a shame, honestly, because if you think about it, and the first analogy was given to me by my grandfather about insurance planning, and he said, think about just building, Zachary. He goes, think about building a house, a car, whatever it was, right? He said, what's the most important thing? And this is just, it's like an expression. The foundation has to be the most important, right? You have to have a solid foundation. And he goes, your insurance planning is the foundation. And he said to me, Zachary, think of it this way. He goes, what is most likely to erode, right? Most likely to erode a house, right? You have flooding from this or that, whatever, right? Earthquakes, whoever knows, right? But these natural disasters type situations, they're most likely to just rip apart your foundation, right? And he said, well, Zachary, people have natural disasters in their lives all the time, right? They become disabled, they become ill, they, unfortunately, maybe their spouse or someone, close to them, someone they're dependent on, dies. right? So you have to make sure that, when you do a financial plan, people are properly insured, because it could take a whole lifetime to build up your savings for this, that, or the other. And then next thing you know, I lose my job because, I'm only able to work 50% of the hours, right? Or at least like we saw in COVID, right? A lot of people dealing with mental illnesses that, at least for the last 100 years, have been so untreated that it's just been building up, and it's not been so unspoken of. And now they can't work. And mental illness is real. It's a disability, no different than, you breaking your back. It's real. And next thing you know, your income gone, your mode of savings gone, your mode of paying your expenses gone. So what do you go to? Your savings, right? So it's by far the most important and way too often overlooked. It's because it's not fun, right? Not too many people look at insurance and go, "Oh my God, I'm so excited!" Like I woke up this morning and I'm like, "Man, I want to talk about disability insurance." So it's a shame, but it has to be included.
And I relate to that a lot because we talk to clients all the time about wills and power of attorneys, and it's the topic everybody sort of wants to talk about, knows that they have to do it. It's always in their back of their mind. And then when they finally get around to doing a will, like there's such a good feeling of peace of mind because you should be doing it, but no one wants to talk about it. You don't want to talk about when you're dying and when you're incapacitated and someone else is signing authority for you, or take your parent to go sign a will, or talk about them becoming like, these are terrible topics, right? And insurance is right in the middle of all that. It's part of the discussion. It's not fun. And everybody sort of puts it on the back burner, right? I'm sure you get that.
Well, I was going to say, the problem is it's always in the back of their mind, like you said.
Right.
That's there.
And when you do get it done, you get a little bit organized that way. It really does give you an element of that peace of mind thing, that you got your affairs a little bit in order, and for maybe you're good for a couple of years, and then you got to review it again.
Yeah. I had one of my first insurance cases was with this lovely couple, real earnest people, right? Just mom and dad. They got a bunch of kids, 4 or 5 kids, and they go out to work every day. He works in construction. She's an administrative professional, and they go out and I came to their house one night. It was like 9:30 because it's when they could finally put their kids to bed and everything, and they had a second to breathe. And we're sitting there, and I have my processes, my steps, and everything. And this was very early on for me, so I was following just what the guidelines were, right? The industry guidelines at the time, and we were talking just about end of life planning, right? So God forbid something actually did happen, right? We're there to discuss life insurance. I said, "Do you have a will?" I said, "Who would take care of your children?" And the question just hit them in the face like an 18-wheeler. Because life insurance is one thing, especially knowing, what's realistically the likelihood of 2 young and healthy individuals dying prematurely. It's very, very low. But the question then wasn't just about, finance. It was about literally, I need somebody to watch my kids, right? Like, I've got babies here. And so when I do any type of planning like this, the questions are always, you got a will, you even have a secondary will, a corporate will, right? Do you have power of attorneys? What happens if he comes home one day and he was hit by a bulldozer, which is a very, very gruesome expression, but still, what happens? Who's taking care of him? And the face, just, you could see their eyes just swallow them, right? It's like, wow. And so it's far too important. The amount of people that die intestate in Canada is just an absolute joke, to be honest with you. It's a shame. It's far too important when we do this kind of planning. So everybody go get a will and go to Kormans.
Yeah, thanks for the commercial there. Okay, but and I appreciate, but that's always part of the discussion, I guess, that you got with everybody, right? You got to get into that part of it. But you start with basics of money management. So what are you telling your clients? Like, here's the basic. This is what we really have to focus on. This is how we got to start this process.
No problem. Yeah, exactly. We always start with money management in some respect, because at the end of the day, even if you do life insurance planning, you need to know what you're planning for, right? So the discussion is, what are our monthly expenses look like, right? Like, we have a mortgage. What are we making in with respect to income? Are we self-employed? Because, a lot of people in Canada are self-employed, whether they are literally self-employed or they're self-employed working with the same firm, spending their whole time there, their whole life, self-employed. We have to make sure we're going through all the calculations. Are we up to date on CPP, EI? Are we saving for retirement? What does the average budget look like? Because the majority of people I meet are spending more than they're saving, which is, a common problem in Canada. And the majority of the time it's on their mortgage. That's just because of the cost of housing and especially the GTA where I work. And so it's not the worst thing to be spending on. Like if you told me, I had somebody come up to me and say, I got a $5,000 bill for Uber in 1 month between just, Uber Eats and then taking Ubers all over the place. I looked at them, I said, you're out of your mind. You gotta start walking. We go through these things. So the rule that I like to use is a 30-70 split. That's just the basic, I hit everybody with that. Then the next question is, well, what do we actually need to live here? Because the cost of living is so high, it's not exactly always easy to cut down certain things, right? Like, we got to put food on the table, and the food, the food in Canada, the cost of food has increased by 17% over the last 2 years, right? We got, as much as I don't, want a car because I don't want to have to spend, financing or a lease or gas and insurance. I got to get places, right? So it's hard, but what we like to do is the 30-70 split, because often enough, if you do 18% for an RRSP and we take that, of that 30% right off the top, we move that away, right? Because you have to save for your retirement. Pay yourself first, people, right? And then we have 12% left, which is a little bit more because it's after tax and we used an RRSP. Then what are we doing with that, right? We have to make sure that we're paying down, good debt. We have to make sure that, well, we could do that in 70% too. We have to make sure that we're saving for children's education, TFSAs, right? Like, maybe we want to buy a car outright next time instead of financing it and leasing it, right? We want to make sure we got money in case that flood does happen. So insurances, all that stuff. And so we run through that program, see what they're spending on. I like to do an exercise, which is just, it's like the walk of shame, but with the credit card bill. Okay. So it's print your credit card bills and let's see your dirty secrets, right? And then we see $100 Uber Eats here, $250 Amazon, an extra $300 here, $400 here. And then it's just a simple question. Do you think you need to spend this money? And then the answer is always no.
I call it the latte effect, right? And I see it with my staff, right? And Starbucks is literally, well, it was in Streetsville around the corner from us. And sometimes I would see that Starbucks cup 2 or 3 times in one of my employees' hands. And, people don't realize, but that adds up a lot over a month, over a quarter, over a year. There's a lot of money going to, coffee and sugar, of which we have a machine down the cafeteria, and it's free for all staff and realtors to have as much coffee as they like, right? So, free coffee, maybe you have to bring your own milk because we have powdered milk in the office, unfortunately. It's just easier to keep track of. Or you can pay, $6-7 a cup 3 times a day. I mean, that's a lot of money to be spending on lattes, right? So, that's an exercise that every household should go through and really dissect their spending and look at what they're spending money, because a lot of the fluff can be cut out, and it's discipline. It's not easy. It takes discipline to do, but I think we're all guilty of it in one form or another.
You're exactly right. The first, I have the social media team, and the first post that we were making, I said, it's a Starbucks problem. You look in my area, just everybody walking on the street, they got a hand on a stroller with a kid in the stroller in one hand and a Starbucks in the other. It's like a walking advertisement for it. And
I stay away from it. I don't do that stuff.
The old faithful David, he at least gets the Tim Hortons, right? He's supporting our Canadian companies.
Well, even I've cut down on that. Like, it was every single day to Tim Hortons, and then I got an espresso machine, but it's not that inexpensive too. The espresso pods, the difference between the Tims and that, but then it's a whole nother level to a Starbucks, but it does make a difference.
And a big part of the problem too is once you become accustomed to the Starbucks, because I don't drink coffee. It's thing of contention for me because I don't want to spend that money, especially. But I don't. That's how cheap I am. I sleep an extra hour just so I can get it. But I don't drink the coffee. But when you get accustomed to that flavor, right? Because it's like everyone says, it is high quality stuff, and the cost of coffee beans have gone up so much that you have to supplement it at least with something as good like the Nespresso machine, because that's still fine coffee, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right. Now, I think, Zach, a lot of our audience is real estate agents,
Let's do it.
realtors,
Yes.
and brokers. So we always like to try and keep our conversation a little bit to, towards them. So what type of advice, if you're thinking about realtors, what are the type of things do you want to, what message you want to give them in terms of what they should be considering for money management and planning?
Absolutely. So funny enough, the majority of my audience on social media is actually realtors as well. And I cater a lot of my discussion to realtors because I work with a lot of real estate investors. And more often I find realtors are also real estate investors, right? Which is great because it's like a, walk like you walk and talk like you talk type of thing. So with realtors, the first thing you start off with, right, is the fact that we're all commission workers here. I'm a commission worker too, right? So, it's definitely an area that's not supported enough, because if you think about it, the most saturated markets in the country are financial professionals, real estate professionals, right? That includes mortgage brokers, financial advisors, realtors. We're all commission workers, right? So we need to have this discussion, and the discussion a lot of time is, are we spending enough money on our business? Right? Are we making enough to generate a return to spend enough? I was definitely like that guy at the beginning where it's like, oh, I just made my first, $5,000 sale, right into the bank. Like, no, it's not how it works, Zachary, right? You make a $5,000 sale. This is what you need to live. This is what you need to start reinvesting in your business to make the next $5,000 sale. And so when I talk a lot with realtors, it's a business conversation on one hand, a family conversation on the other, and we got to figure out a way how to merge the two conversations, right? First and foremost, because we're commission workers, do we have enough savings? That's always my primary concern, because, and especially we've seen over the last 6 months, really with real estate sales, we need to make sure that we can pay our mortgage next month too, right? So we're making sure we have enough savings. Disability insurance is huge for realtors. We'll have that discussion. We'll look at their overall budget, because I don't want them overspending as well. I work with a lot of realtors, and you find from one to the other how they invest their money in their business is quite unique, which is interesting to me. Some of them are more concerned with the investment side of things on real estate, and building an empire or their own portfolio that way, which isn't bad because you still are generating return that way, rather than, for instance, putting it into media. When I find a property or a listing or whatever it is, and I see the 3D tour, clear pictures, they've got the drone out to take this nice, beautiful YouTube video of it, right? Like, I know what this person's doing. I know that they're on a next level. And so, when we have that discussion and break down costs, it's important. So realtors, are we incorporating ourselves? Are we making sure that we're writing off our expenses in an efficient way? Are we keeping a book of mileage? Because any realtor knows you spend the majority of your day in your car, right? So are we making sure that we're writing our mileage off properly? Because CRA, they are ruthless, guys. They are ruthless. So make sure that we got a book writing down our miles so that we can write that off properly. And then on top of that, it's, how do we figure out that 30-70 split on top of what we're putting back into the business? So there are definitely some important things that we go through. It's a little unique to everybody because some realtors are making $1.5 million a year, and some of them are making $50,000 a year. And then, if you have a spouse, then we got to start considering what the spouse is doing and what kind of risks we can associate, the realtor job with, considering we have a spouse who makes this. So it's a different discussion for everybody, but it's important that we're knocking down the basics, which is we got to have enough money saved. Are we doing our tax planning properly? And that's very basic bookkeeping tax planning that everybody can figure out how to do using just QuickBooks, right?
So what are 5 things every realtor should do when it comes to money planning or management?
Oh boy, good question. Okay. First thing I would say is figure out what you need to live on your personal side. Okay, because personal always comes first, right? We need to be able to live in order to enjoy our business. And I would say find a way to make that as necessity based as possible, right? We all want the great things in life. All of us should drive an $180,000 Mercedes Benz. All of us should have 3 investment properties and live in a $2.5 million house to begin with. But we need to make sure that we have our basic monthly budget figured out first. This is what we need to live. Okay. So that's the first thing you should do. The second thing you should do after that is figure out how much work you need to do as a commission worker in order to generate this, because not everybody is chasing a bag, right? A lot of us just want to live a nice lifestyle. So if I can work 90 hours a week and make, $15,000 a week, then that's great. But maybe I want to spend a little bit more time with my family, right? So how much do we need to live in order to satisfy our budgetary necessities? And on top of that, maybe save a little money on top of that. The third thing I would start doing is the bookkeeping, okay? If you can keep yourself honest with the bookkeeping, it's just good tax planning, it's good for your filings, it's good for CRA, and if what's good for CRA is good for you, trust me. And if you can get those things done, then the fourth thing I would start looking to is how do we scale, right? So how do we build our business? How do we build our portfolio with respect to properties? I'm one of the only financial advisors out here. I feel like that I'm all for real estate investment. Do it, okay? You don't need to hold your money in mutual funds with me only, okay? Sure, you should have some because diversification is important, but build the real estate empire. And then the fifth thing I would do is, and it's a little unique, but I would find mentoring opportunities. And it's not just the financial advice coming from me. That's me as a commission worker, just like everyone else, saying, hey, we need to hear from other people how they're doing it in order to figure out what we're doing, right? It's just like when I coached hockey, research and development is just replicate and duplicate, right? Find what somebody else is doing, what their recipe to success is, duplicate it to make it into your own, and then figure out how to make it successful for you too. So those are 5 important things that I would be doing, especially for realtors.
Oh, those are all excellent. I guess on point number 5, it's a little hard to know what somebody's financial aptitude is, right? Because you see them wearing nice clothes, you see them driving a fancy car, but all too often they just have a high lease payment, no money in the bank, and a lot of debt on their credit card. So it's really hard to tell, who has like an estate, unless you're Zachary Rain, right? And you see everybody's books and you kind of see the story and the back end of things, right? But it's really hard to tell who has the financial aptitude. And in my experience, a lot of the guys who drive the fancy cars and wear the fancy suits, don't have the financial backing behind them to really showcase what they should be doing.
So, that part is something that divides me, right? Because as a financial professional, I want everybody to use their assets and use their income and their money as efficiently as possible, right? It's all about efficiency. But on the same token, when I was in school, and I have an economics degree, right, finance and business economics degree, and to toot my own horn, I was very good at this. Okay, so this is something that I would look so deeply into and try and understand not just the numbers, but the human psychology behind it, right? So I had a class in 3rd year, which was 7 years ago, but it was one of my favorite classes, and we discussed, why do people buy from certain people, right? And it's a crude discussion, but do people buy from pretty people more? Do they buy from skinny people more? Do they buy from men more? Do they buy from women more? And what are the factors that make them do it? And so I was doing a regression, which is just an analysis on what factors make people act a certain way, right? And it really gets to the human psychology behind it. And the amount of people that purchase from people who look rich is, first of all, it's disappointing, but it is so high that there is empirical evidence to buy that Benz, which is a shame because I don't want them to do it either, right? But if you look at pure advertising, if you walk down the street and you see a financial professional driving a $900,000 car, right? You see them driving that Lamborghini, Bugatti, whatever it is, then you think, well, they're a fool. They don't know how to spend their money, right? Because nobody should be spending that kind of money, and you don't want to take financial advice from somebody like that. My uncle built an absolutely fantastic finance business in Ottawa, very, very well respected. And his advice to me was, Zachary, drive a Chevy. Okay, they're good. They're good cars. They're well-built cars. Nobody can question whether you're making money or losing money, and it looks like you're responsible no matter how much money you're making. So I bought myself a Honda Accord. Fits me. 6'3", need a bigger car. But I have professionals come up to me all the time, lawyers, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, of course, and they say to me, well, Zachary, people want to buy from me because I live the lifestyle, right? And it's hard to argue with that. But on the token of being able to replicate and duplicate from other people, you have to get into a deeper conversation when it comes to their personal finances. But a lot of it comes more to the scaling side of things too, right? Like, for instance, there's a real estate agent in Thornhill, very popularly known, who literally will go door knocking and he'll stream it, right? He'll stream it on Facebook or whatever it is every single day, cold calling, stream it. So people can see his process, they can see what he's doing, and, they can see how hard he's working. I want to say hard because, we only see what we see. And it's another way to advertise and promote yourself. And if it works for him, and I see listings for him all the time, so it must be working. It must be, a good strategy. So that's more along the lines of what I mean.
Yeah, look, I've never personally bought the flash guy as that's the guy that I want, because I've seen a lot of them over the years. It doesn't matter what industry they're in, but most of the guys or ladies that I see that are doing that, a lot of times it's second or third generation flash. They're not self-made people. Mm-hmm. And they're just showing it, and they want the world to think they are. But if you really know who they are, a lot of times it's not them. They're really riding on their parents or their grandparents' coattails to some degree. So they're not nearly as successful personally as they appear to be. Mm-hmm. So I know I've just never gone for that. I want the guys that are real. I don't care what you drive. I don't care how you get to work. Just get there and do the job. And I don't care what kind of watch you have. I just want to know what time it is. So look at your phone. Tell me what time it is if we need to know the time. But, and I'm not, that's just a personal thing, right? But I know there are other people that are very impressed by seeing that. They want that real estate agent that looks like he's really successful, or they want that lawyer maybe that's really successful. I don't think it's anybody's business what I'm driving. I don't want it. People, I go to someone's office, I park away from the office. It's not, I don't want to be judged by what I happen to be driving that day or what I'm wearing.
No, I'm definitely more aligned with you, David. My father taught me, he said, Zachary, you know what the point of a car is? And I said, what? He goes, to get you from A to B. Okay. Get you from A to B safely, you're fine. So I'm definitely more aligned with what you're saying. And that's just my personal beliefs. But I guess to each their own, right? So.
Right.
Zachary, have you ever read a book called The Millionaire Next Door?
I haven't. It's on my list.
Oh, you have to read that book. It's going to change the way you think about money, right? What they did, David Korman, have you heard of the book?
No.
So what they did is they took, I think, 1,000 of the richest families in the United States in the 1980s, and they surveyed them. And they asked them detailed questions about everything from how they raise their kids to what their money beliefs are, to where they went to school, to how much, what's the most you've ever spent on a suit, what's the most you've ever spent on a watch, what's the most you've ever spent on a car. Like just like really deep down questions to really dig in and understand what their aptitude is about finances. And the statistics would shock you guys, like absolutely shock you guys. It's a great book, highly recommend it, and just really big eye opener.
No, I appreciate that. It's on my list. I've had people tell me about how amazing it is too. It's the guy's worth 100 million driving the Prius, right?
That's exactly what it is, and especially a lot of the mentality surrounding kids and money and how to kind of transfer wealth to that next generation. It's very interesting, right? So one of the concepts in there is that if you buy your kids a house in an upper middle class neighborhood, then they're going to struggle to really fit in, right? Because the kids have to go to private schools, you have to drive a certain car, right? And are you setting them up for failure?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. That's a practical conversation that I have actually almost every day. So I hear what you're saying. I definitely want to read the book, but it's a hard discussion to have because from the kids' perspective, and especially because I'm younger, right? So I can relate to what they're saying. There is very low chance that they are able to generate the kind of wealth that their parents did, for instance, in the same economy and time frame, right? It's no secret that in Canada, where's the majority of the wealth come from, right? It comes from our houses. I just read an article this morning, 3% of our GDP this year was housing, which, it doesn't sound like a lot to most people, but from somebody who studied GDP for 5 years in school, that's a massive amount, okay? Most well-developed countries don't even hit 1%. So it's a different world we live in. But I have those discussions. I have clients, the guy who's worth $50 million, right? And him and his wife are sitting there saying, we're leaving the kids nothing, right? Why? I figured it out on my own, so can they, right? And then I have the other ones who are saying, maybe we'll put it in a trust, and maybe we'll give them allotments every year just to make sure that they can afford to send their kids to private school. But I'm also not handing them, the golden goose right from day one, right? So it's definitely different. I think it's a personal conversation. It depends on how you were raised, how you made your wealth, and how your kids behave. I have friends who, and you would never believe it until you join the industry and you start seeing behind the curtains, right? What people actually have in the bank. I have friends who lived and grew up, I would consider to be very modestly. And then you check mom and dad's investment portfolio and they're sitting on $3.5 million outside of their RRSPs, thinking, wow, good for them, right? They could have definitely used that money to send their kid to do this, or put this type of clothing on their kid, or buy them that fancy car, but they didn't. So it's
again, it's discipline, right? And life choices.
Absolutely.
Let's talk more about realtors. What should their yearly budget look like?
Well, it's just like the question before. I think that's a question of relativity, right? So it's that 70-30 necessities. Make sure that you're not outliving your income. I hate nothing more than when somebody calls me and says, I have to borrow money to pay taxes this year. That just drives me nuts. So don't outlive what your income. Don't live beyond it, your means, whatever the expression is. You can use a different one every time. So live modestly. Then on top of that,
and that's an important message right now, because we're in a downturn in the market right now, where there's a lot of people are struggling with it, because you need they could have planned their year out for this year, and maybe they were going good the first 6 months of the year, and then the market sort of shut off to some degree, and it's okay, cash flow, how do I deal with that? And what if the back half of my year ends up being what it's been the last month or two, right? That's a tough thing for anybody to adjust all of a sudden. Even if they've listened to what your advice, Zach, and here's my budget for the year, and this is how much I really think I need to live on. All of a sudden the cash flow gets cut off.
No,
then
of
what
course.
do you do?
No, it goes dry. So when we started the pandemic, I was preaching, and when I say preaching, I mean I was literally preaching. Five videos a day I was almost doing on my social medias, just telling everybody. I told everybody, start hoarding cash. Okay, hoard as much cash as you can, because and I studied economic cycles in school. Again, this isn't typical. This is an atypical economic cycle because of what the pandemic did. And it wasn't going to be a short, I remember the time period, whenever it was, just about a year ago, where markets, obviously they were in a major downturn. Next thing they start skyrocketing, right? The economy's opening, it's not going to be that quick, people. Okay. Especially considering the billions that we printed in money. It was never going to be that quick. So I was always telling people, the rule of thumb was 6 months emergency funds, right? Emergency savings. I want you to double that. Okay. 12 months. If you can hit that, then I think you'll be more comfortable. And the reason is because a lot of people lost their jobs, right? A lot of people did. And you can see now, again, a lot of people are losing their jobs. Small business openings have reduced 50% year over year. Equity offerings have reduced 62% or whatever it was this morning, just about year over year. And that to me means A, nobody wants to open a new business. Why? Probably because they can't afford a loan to do it. And B, no new companies are entering the public space. Why? Because nobody can afford to invest in them. And those are both two very big indicators of an economic downturn, because nobody has money to expand on growth, right? So
for the first time, sorry, Zachary, for the first time, I was on the phone with a really good contact of mine that has a stucco business this morning, and for the first time in like, I don't know how many years, he's actually feeling a slowdown in his construction business, right? It's happening throughout the board. Builders are laying off skilled workers, construction is slowing down, number of permits is decreasing. So we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in the construction industry as well.
Yeah, no, it's happening. It's starting to come, which is, again, it's expected, right? For me, it's also all about managing expectations, right? Especially because the markets are just like a teeter-totter, right? People aren't managing their expectations when investing. This is going to happen. It's not going to be fun. Is it going to last a year? Probably, maybe a little longer. Average recession lasts 3 years, boom, lasts 10 years or so, right? But we have to make sure that we're prepared for that. So, you know, if we're talking about a realtor's budget, again, we're commission workers working in a market now where interest rates are 6% if you're lucky, right? You know, the average household can't afford 6%. The average household was offered a mortgage 2 years ago for 1.5% with a stress test of give or take 3%, right? Like, we were prepared for 4%. We're sitting at 6%, and now we know that people are hurting, right? You know, I'm sure that both of you are actually seeing it, which is, you know, my client can't afford their house. We need to sell it. We need to do it in a way so that it doesn't look like a fire sale, because we don't want people to think, you know, one way or another, and we still want to get a good price. But by no means can my client afford their mortgage right now. We need to get them into something better. And it's no one's
is that the rental market is higher than, you know,
yeah,
the
exactly.
that you're paying on your house. So, you know, that's, you know, the difficulty that we're seeing out there, and rental rates have never been this high in the history of in the history that we've seen, right? Like, we're seeing an average detached house in Mississauga go for almost, you know, $4,000, $4,500. Like, it's, you know, and there's not much to choose from out there.
No, you're right. It's like a snowball effect, right? Housing prices increase, cost of our mortgage increases, our rental has to increase, right? For the investors. So it's becoming crazy out there. The world is on fire, blah 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 blah. But we need to find a way to manage it. And so that's why I tell people, don't live beyond your means. Okay, find something we can all afford. There's always something that can go, and no one could tell me otherwise. You know, maybe we need to start taking the buses. I see they built beautiful bus lanes everywhere, right? Construction for years and beautiful bus lanes.
Good
You only
luck
spend
with that.
$1,000
Trading your
a car.
Mercedes-Benz for a bus pass. I
Yeah,
don't see that happening anytime soon.
no, I pray.
Hey, why get a bus pass when you have a bike lane too? No
Exactly.
bike lane. For 6 months of the year in the winter time in the GTA, nobody's in a bike lane, but there's bike lanes. They're building them all over the place.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to help. They're laying the foundation. I think it's just something that a lot of us need to come to terms with, right? You want that $1.5 million house? It's what they call FOMO, housing FOMO. I don't know. Did you read that article this morning? Came out from a publishing company that I follow. Housing FOMO. Everybody wants to be in the housing market, but they can't afford it. So we're buying houses that, you know, maybe we can't afford, and then we're losing out on everything else. But it's something we have to do. And it's a shame, but it's true, right? You know, we can't all be renters our whole life. A lot of us want to have the pride of owning property and the asset protection of owning a property too. So
yeah, and if you're not investing in real estate, even for your own personal home, where are you putting your money that's doing better? The stock market right now, like
insurance.
Well, how's that for putting it on a tee for you, Zach?
No, I appreciate that one, David. Honest to God, the amount of calls I've had this year have been overwhelming. It's very nice, because selling life insurance as an asset and as a wealth class it's hard enough to begin with, and I don't like selling. I'm the type of person which provides a solution and hopes that somebody buys my solution. But it's been overwhelming, the amount of people who have called me and said, "Damn, you're right." Like, thank you. It's the only asset class, and for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, life insurance, you know, the basic term life insurance that you hear, you know, oh, I need to get that to protect my kids. That's one type of life insurance, but there's another type. It's permanent life insurance. Within that, there's 2 separate types of permanent life insurance. But the beauty of it is that they're assets. They have value, just like your home. There's cash inside that grows, right? It's invested in a market. How is it invested in a market differently? Well, it's a business. Life insurance is a business, right? A lot of people take loans from their life insurance. You pay interest on that, right? For you, that's money in the bank, right? People buy more life insurance, money in the bank. Sure, you pay death benefits, but we have rules as life insurance companies to have a certain amount of reserves available to pay those anyways, right? What are we investing in? We're investing in companies. We're investing in the life insurance company. We're investing in banks. We're investing in real estate in Colorado. That's a lot of what people are looking into right now, the big banks. We're investing in private placement bonds from governments that some of us have no clue are even available. And that's kind of creating an economy of scope. But the beautiful thing about life insurance, everybody, is that it's a guaranteed asset. It doesn't go down, not unless you take the value out. So it's something that has brought a lot of my clients solace in the last two years, knowing that no matter what, the value of their life insurance can't go down. So how would you feel if I woke up and said, hey, David, you want a guaranteed, and I love saying David, it applies to both of you. You want a guaranteed asset, it's not going to go down in value for 2 years. I promise you, it won't go down in value as long as you don't touch it. It's going to stay that way or at least go up. Pretty happy about that.
You can't say that about any other type of asset these days. No
Yeah,
guarantees.
I'm not really, turned on by the 2% or the 3% increase, but I do understand that over a 20 or 30 year time span, it really works in your favor, especially if you're disciplined about putting away a sum of money that you're comfortable with. And there's certainly huge advantages and estate planning advantages for, whole life insurance policies as well, especially on the corporate side. So, but that's probably 2 episodes in and of itself. It's information we can go into.
Yeah, I know it definitely is 2 episodes. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but it's like you said, estate planning. We want to talk about realtors. Okay, here, realtors. We all should have PRECS by now. If not, we're pretty close to getting PRECS. Personal real estate corporations, everybody. Why are we doing that? Why? It's just incorporating as a legality. It's a better way to separate yourself from liability from one thing to another. It's a great way to organize your assets financially as well, and your income and things like that. And for those realtors who have just been hoarding cash in their corporations, or they have holdcos that are that own those corporations that are now, they're moving money around, they're buying properties, whatever it is, every single one of you now has a tax liability, right? We own a corporation. We started off at $1. And now we all have hundreds, God willing, hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in there, millions of properties. Well, God forbid you passed away, disposition of assets, unless you can roll it over to your spouse, in which case, when they pass away, disposition of assets. Who's paying the tax bill? CRA's coming knocking, and they will not leave until they get paid. So life insurance, that's what I do. Corporate life insurance, and the 2 or 3%. Well, it's closer to 5 or 6%. And when you do it inside of a life insurance policy,
right?
Yeah, and when you do it inside a life insurance policy that grows tax free, and you're making a 40% tax rate a year, well, now it's 9%. And when you know that life insurance gets paid out of your corporation tax free on death, give or take, wow, now it's 11%. And when you know that you can leverage an asset, if you're putting enough money into it a year, when you know that you can leverage that cash value at 100% a year. Why? Because it's never going to go down. Well, now you're making 11% on that, paying a 4%, 5% interest rate, and using that money and putting it back into real estate. So good planning, not to mention life insurance is going to pay your tax bill. That's a lot of what I do, guys. A lot of what I do. I work with young families looking to build, and I work with a lot of wealthy individuals who have built these portfolios and need that kind of estate and tax planning. It's a great strategy to leverage life insurance and continue to build the value in your corporation. So it's amazing how with the proper planning, that 2 or 3% can turn into 9 or 10%.
And time is your biggest leverage, right? Because I find that realtors, a lot of realtors don't have a long-term perspective. We're always looking for the next deal. Who's our next client? Where's the next paycheck coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest shift that has to happen in order to really build wealth is that you have to have a long-term perspective. You got to think about, what's happening next year, what's happening 5 years from now, what's happening 10 years from now, what is my financial outlook going to look 20 years from now, right? And when you can have that kind of a life outlook on your finances, then it's so much easier to incorporate insurance into the conversation.
It definitely is much easier. And I like to think that the majority of us, whether we're realtors, mortgage brokers, financial advisors, or we're just, the common person just working away at our 9 to 5, we all should be considering long-term planning, right? Because sooner rather than later, the long-term is going to become the short-term. And we have to see, not only what we've been able to achieve in that, that time frame, what are we now looking into the long term for? Do we have a long-term goal that we want to achieve? So it's an exercise that I like to do as part of what I call fact finding, which is just determining what kind of financial situation we're looking at and what we want to build towards, which is, tell me your long-term goals. I look at short term, in the first 2 years, then we look at midterm, which is 3 to 7 almost, and then I want to know what's that 8 plus 10 plus year outlook looking at. And for people that tell me they don't have goals, I say that's awful. You should have goals 10 plus out. Look, what can we achieve? Be dreamers. There's nothing wrong with being dreamers. So as long as you have a goal that you can work towards, it's further incentive to work harder as well, right?
And that's part of our sports backgrounds. You learn that with all seriousness when you do play sports, and good coaches and leadership mentors are all talking about setting a goal. Because if you don't have a goal, it's just another day. It's just Groundhog Day, right? And we all do that. We get into those ruts, and it's just another day. Get up and do my thing. But every once in a while, you gotta look at the bigger picture and set some goals for your personal life, your business life, around where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. You got to think of it in some terms and try and set a goal. Otherwise, you'll never be pushing towards that goal line.
No, you're exactly right. It's a great analogy. It's something that my grandfather, who led a very, very large insurance company for 15 years, he was, an avid leader. That's something he studied his whole life. He always said the same thing to me too, David. He said, being a good financial advisor, planner, whatever you want to call yourself, is just like being a good leader. You have to be able to lead people to think about these things, set the goals. And so my coaching background, when I got into the business, it really did help, because it's a conversation that I've had, in stinky dressing rooms in Etobicoke Land Ice Arena with 12-year-olds, thinking, hey, sky's the limit, guys. Maybe we're not NHL players, but, do we want to win championships? Do we, are we building ourselves to be good humans? Right? Like, are we going to be able to take these skills that we're building today, this no die, never quit attitude, and apply it to life in 15 years from now for you guys? So
I think I was there in that direction right after your team left, because I remember I can still smell that smell.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
It's funny you mention stuff like that, and just like you can almost smell it, right?
Yeah.
Because you just know what you're talking about.
Yeah. No, it's horrible. What can you do?
Zachary, I know this is a subjective question, but and it's going to be different for everybody, but in your opinion, and I love that you mentioned this, because I think it's so important, and not enough realtors do this on a regular basis. Reinvesting back into your own business. What percentage of income should realtors reinvest back into the business?
It's a good question. Yes, it definitely is subjective, because you have to be able to afford that percentage and then some to be able to do it, right? It's having that budget of necessities first, and then working, like I said, through the steps.
It's almost like a catch-22, right? Because if you don't, how are you going to build your business?
I know it's a hard one. It's definitely a hard one. And that's why I say budget of necessities, right? Things we need, right? The wants can wait, because we're building an empire here, right? We have to have that mentality that we want to build and build and build. So in my personal business, which I can attribute similarly to a realtor, I'm a commission worker. We have to make sure that we're turning over leads on an everyday basis. So it's always about, like what I did last week is never important, because I'm only as good as what I'm doing this week, right? So what I will attribute is I have my budget of necessities. I know what I can take home, and then I know what I have after that, and what I've been able at least to generate after that. And I'm putting of that money, the majority of it back into my business.
Majority of it.
Yeah, the majority. The reason especially being is because I'm young, right? Like I sit here talking to you guys with a very modest boutique finance firm, but I want to be a household name, right? So I have very aggressive goals. Some may call me a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I want to
You should write that down. That could form the basics of a good song someday.
exactly, right. But the majority of the money over after the budget necessities, after I'm putting money towards retirement, I'm putting money towards building a portfolio on my personal side, right? It doesn't have to always be business side of things, because it's just like anybody. My dream is to not work one day too, or at least to be able to not work one day soon. So once I've been able to accomplish those things, I want to scale. I'm putting back money into marketing. I put money into processes because a good client experience is the best marketing you can get, right? Like,
Zach, let's talk about you. What percentage of your income do you put back into your business?
I put approximately everything before, I want to say 35%, give or take. Yeah,
so you 35% back into systems and marketing in your business.
In building my business, not just systems and marketing, but yes.
35%.
Yeah.
Wow. Good
Well,
for you. That's unbelievable.
I'm able to live a very modest lifestyle because I have the long-term sight, right? And that's, I shouldn't say that's just me, right? I do have a partner. We work very hard together, and my partner, I have a spouse, partner. And so we work very hard together. She's invested in helping build my business as well as I'm invested in helping, build her career and her profession. And so between the two of us, we're doing 35%. Myself, probably still 30% plus. But that's what I'm looking to do. It's like I said,
love that you just shared that percentage, because to me, that shows how serious and how committed you are to growing your business. So first of all, I want to congratulate you, because that is phenomenal. I've probably never heard a percentage that high, talking with anybody else in the real estate industry, right? And I mean, that's where my expertise is. So honestly, congratulations, Zachary. That's unbelievable. It really shows how much you believe in your dream.
You have to be committed to the process, right? Yeah, I see Rain Finance on a big building downtown one day. That's where I see that raindrop. I don't want the whole Rain
I'll
Finance.
help you buy the building.
Right, exactly, right? That's what I want. We have to be able to build partners, good relationships throughout all of our careers. And when we have good relationships with individuals and we have trust built, right? The sky really is the limit. And I've seen it done. I have intimate relationships with people who literally own the buildings, right? That all of these names are plastered on, and are developing the buildings too. And I think it's amazing. And when I listen to their stories, they're not too different from mine. They're a young hustler, right? Man, woman, child, doesn't matter what you are, right? Everybody, we're all out here. We're just working hard. And so if you can be committed to the process and, you're reading the books, you're doing the literature, you're following webinars, you listen to enough motivational speakers, and you see enough of the results. And then because of my profession, I can see the results. Then that's what I want to do. I want people to see the raindrop and think, hey, that guy works for Rain Finance.
Let it rain.
That's right.
There's a topic here, and I know we're running short on time, but it just really caught my attention. So I'm going to ask you about this. What is this infinite banking
Oh boy.
concept on the itinerary? I know there's so much we still have to talk about. So Zachary, we're probably going to have you on a part 2 of an episode, but what is infinite banking? I have to ask you.
Okay, how much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding.
We got a few minutes. This might just be a teaser for the next
exactly.
episode.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is, David. Okay, so infinite banking, it's an American concept, using life insurance cash value, borrowing against that, and using that to further invest in your lifestyle, whether that's in a business or invest in assets. That's the concept. I say it's Americanized, for a couple of reasons. One, started off there mainly because of their tax rules, and just again, the majority of stuff we see starts in the States, right? But basically, it's a strategy where you buy a whole life insurance policy. There, they have different names for all their different types of insurances. But again, similar foundation. You buy a whole life insurance policy, otherwise known as participating life insurance. It has cash value associated with it, meaning it has literal equity in a fund, in an insurance fund. Percentages vary depending on your age, what you do, blah, blah, blah. But you use the cash value in the life insurance that again is growing tax-free, guaranteed to never go down. And you go to a lender, or you use the insurance company as a lender, and you say, can I have a loan against a certain percentage of my cash value? And then you take that loan and you invest it elsewhere.
Right? It's guaranteed money. So
guarantee, exactly. Can I tell you something? As somebody who works in money, and I work with mortgage brokers, commercial mortgage broker, whatever it is, I've never had so much ease getting a loan as getting a loan for life insurance. It's becoming clockwork. It's so simple because it's guaranteed. It's not going to go down. So the banks love loaning against it. And they take that loan and then they apply it to their business. They apply it to investing in real estate, investing in a stock portfolio. I have investment bankers as clients, and they take this money, this loan, and they laugh because they pay 5% and they're turning 38% a year over, right? So it's a program where you're using life insurance, and yeah, you're using it too for its traditional purposes, estate planning, death benefit planning, whatever it may be. But you're also using it in an advantageous way to build wealth. So that's the concept of infinite banking, the ins and outs of it. Well, we definitely need to plan the next episode, but a lot of people who have retained earnings and are incorporated business owners are doing this, and it has become so popular that like my phone, every day I'm getting a call. Hey, Zachary, tell me more about this infinite banking. So
I like the name. I haven't heard it called infinite banking before. I'm aware of the concept. It's something that I've been looking into for myself. But yeah, from what I understand, it's a very powerful mechanism. And
huge.
Zachary, do you ever pay off the loan you take, or do you only pay interest? And then when you die, you just take it out of your death benefit?
That's different for everybody. Some people don't like to have loans, which is a weird concept to me, especially because the majority of people that do this have used loans to build their wealth. So in my experience, people don't look to pay off the loans. We're servicing the interest because it's tax deductible, and why would we not want to, right? If you have this kind of wealth, you have passive income that is eroding your taxation value, your small business deduction, things like that. So the more tax deduction we can produce, the better, obviously. What we do is we use the proceeds from the life insurance, which is more often than not well in excess of the value of the loan, and we pay off the loan. But
all right, I think we got to for sure get into this a little deeper, break it down a little more. We can't, it's not fair to give you 2 minutes on a concept like that.
No, it's a huge concept. And I have people reaching out to me. I've done just this year, anything from $50,000 a year to, I've worked on cases for $1.5 million, $2 million a year, people doing this.
The whole life.
Annually. It's massive. And it's the only way in Canada, and I've spoken with tax lawyers and accountants, it's the only way in Canada to get money out of your corporation tax-free.
You heard it there. Infinite banking, guys. Stay tuned to episode 2. We're going to unwrap a little bit more, and we're going to get into a lot more finance questions for Zachary Rain. Zachary, thank you so much for joining us today. Rain. Oh my God, Rain. Yes.
It's okay. Zachary Rain rounds pretty good too. That's right.
But this is a great conversation, Zachary. Thank you so much for joining us. And these are important concepts. I think more business owners, because that's who we are business owners, really need to pay attention to, set goals, budget, plan, and execute.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you.
All right, so we're going to set up part 2, Zach, and maybe by then we'll find out if your prediction about Patrick Kane has come to fruition yet.
Yeah,
right.
Let's hope. We're all going to say a hockey prayer tonight. But just thank you guys so much for having me on. I love talking about this stuff. It was a pleasure speaking with you guys, and I definitely am looking forward to part 2.
All right, so are we.
Thanks, Zach.